Part 1.
George and Lisa are overseas students studying in Britain. They are returning home for the summer holidays.
First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 3.
That'll be $23. Right, there's your change. Have a nice trip. Oh, I'll just get your bags out of the boot.
Thank you very much. Now, George, let's find the check-in desk.
Yes, but with all the changes they have made here at the airport, I'm not sure where the check-in desk is.
I know, it's strange, isn't it? Why don't we ask for help?
Good idea. What about that man sitting down over there?
Which one? The one with the hat on and in the trolley?
No, the one with the uniform behind the table. I'll ask him. Excuse me, could you tell me where the check-in desk for France Air is, please? Oh, let me think. The best way to get there would be to turn left at the end there, where the cafe is, and then go straight ahead until you're opposite the departure gates entrance. Oh, no. Sorry. It might be quicker to turn right as soon as you get past the cafe, and keep going along the corridor until you come to the sliding doors at the end. On the left. Yes, that's it. All the check-in counters are in a hall there. I'm pretty sure France Air is directly to your left as you walk in the hall.
Thanks a lot. So, it's the left past the cafe and then right opposite...
The bookshop. You can't miss it. Come on then, Lisa. We don't want to be late, and I want some time to get a cup of coffee and look around the bookshop.
Okay, George, but I want to go to the restroom first. I'll meet you at the check-in desk.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 4 to 10. Now listen and answer questions 4 to 10.
Good morning. Can I help you?
Yes, I would like to check in for flight FA492.
Very good. Can I have your ticket and passport, please?
Oh, yes, here you are.
Okay, thanks. If you could just put your suitcase on the scales.
Oh, I have this extra box that I want to take as well.
Okay, well, that's extra luggage, so I'll have to get you to fill out an excess baggage declaration certificate. It'll cost extra, I'm afraid. Let me see. $40 exactly, if the total value of your contents is under $400.
Oh, well, what's the form for?
It's just a form you have to fill out so that if there are any problems, we'll know where you are and how to contact you. So, if you can give me a few details, I'll key in the information. Okay then, your passport says your name is Lavier. Is that right?
Yes, George Lavier.
George, Lavillliers. Good. Now, nationality. French? No, wait a minute. It's a Swiss passport.
Well, yes, I live in France, but I was born in Switzerland.
Swiss. Very good. Flight number FA492. Destination is...
Paris.
Are you connecting with any other flight in Paris, or will you be staying there?
I'm spending my vacation in Paris. Well, Sèvres, just outside Paris.
Okay. So what's the phone number there?
Let me think. The country code for France is 33, and the number is 198614537.
Right, so that's 331-9861-4537.
Yes, that's it.
And can you tell me briefly what you have in the box?
Well, there are some books, just university textbooks from last semester, some clothes, and, my computer disks.
Okay, thank you. And what would be the approximate value of the contents?
Quite a bit, actually. About $150.
That's all. There's your receipt for the box, your passport and ticket, and here is your boarding pass. Gate 7. You can board the plane in about 35 minutes. Have a nice flight.
That is the end of part 1.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 2.
Part 2.
This morning we are going to look at the issue of cloning. I'd like to begin by looking at some examples of animals that have been cloned before moving on to looking at how cloning is defined.
First, look at questions 11 to 13. As you listen to the first part of the interview, answer questions 11 to 13.
Good morning and welcome to this series of lectures on man interfering with nature. This morning we are going to look at the issue of cloning. I'd like to begin by looking at some examples of animals that have been cloned before moving on to looking at how cloning is defined. The first example I'd like to talk about is Idaho Gem, who was the very first mule to be cloned. Mules are a combination of horse and donkey. Idaho Gem is an identical copy of his brother Taz, who is a racing champion. Thus, we can make the conclusion here that he was cloned to follow in his brother's footsteps. The next example I'd like to refer to is Cece, which stands for copycat. Like her name suggests, she was the first cloned kitten. Interestingly, Cece was created in a laboratory in the state of Texas by the very same scientists who made Dolly the sheep in Scotland. Cece is physically identical to her mother Rainbow, and what is important about this is that it has opened the doors for people to clone their pets in the future. Now, the last animal example I'd like to look at today is the pig. In 2001, 5 piglets were born, all female. They were created by a firm who claimed that their birth is an important step for medicine. The idea is that pig organs and cells could be used in human transplants because the pigs have been cloned without a certain cell. This cell is a vital link because it is the one in human beings that is responsible for making the body reject donor organs. This means that not only is the transplant operation unsuccessful, but the patient's life could be at risk. Now, I'd like to discuss some of the current definitions of cloning.
Now look at questions 14 to 20.
One kind of cloning, the kind commonly found in plants, occurs when plants reproduce themselves around the original plants, known as the parent plants. New plants can then grow. This is quite a natural process by which plants can form more of the same type of plant. Though you may not be aware of it, Another type of cloning happens quite naturally in your body when old cells need to be replaced. Cells in your body split into two and make new chromosomes, and it is the chromosomes that contain our genes. Embryo splitting is another form of cloning, which can happen quite naturally when cells split to form two identical twins. You may then be asking yourself what all the fuss is about, if cloning does in fact happen naturally because sometimes man can interfere with nature and it can work. Take embryo splitting as an example. Now, this type of cloning is quite common in farming, and it is used to breed new bulls and cows. Embryos are placed into foster mother cows, and these then grow into calves. And though some may consider this to be artificial, it has been going on for the last 10 years with relatively few problems. Now, the last type of cloning I'd like to mention is perhaps the most controversial. This type of cloning is called nuclear transfer, and it is when the nucleus of a cell is put into an egg of another animal that is genetically the same. This is done in a laboratory, and after about 5 or 6 days, the embryo is implanted into a donor mother, which is how Dolly the sheep was made. One argument in favor of cloning is that it can help in medicine, as in the case of pigs being used in transplant operations. It is true that many people can wait for up to a year for a new kidney, and then still run the risk of their bodies rejecting the donor kidney. But will using pig organs really be the solution? To answer this question, I'd like to take a look at some responses to the whole idea of using pig organs in humans. Neil Blackwood, who works for the company that cloned the 5 piglets, described it as a major medical advance that could solve the global problem of a lack of organs to use in transplant operations. This could lead in the future to saving human lives. Sheila Halliday, a leading transplant surgeon, does not share his view. She believes that although it is possible to use pig organs in humans, there are very real dangers. Halliday points out that diseases and infections could be passed from pig to human. Of course, she does not yet know this for certain, which is why Halliday strongly advocates that more scientific research be done. She firmly believes pig organs should not be used in human operations until these findings are made public.
That is the end of part 2.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 3.
Part 3.
You will hear a conversation about plans for a university sports centre.
First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 26. Now listen carefully and answer questions 21 to 26.
Before we go on to look at specific sports, let's think for a moment about the non-sports facilities we really need here. Things like better changing rooms and showers.
Yes. If this really is going to be a state-of-the-art building, it'll need to have high-tech amenities, but also places for people to chill out after all the exercise they've been doing. Somewhere they can meet up for a drink or whatever afterwards is essential in a place like this. But what else?
How about a sauna? Those who use them say it's the perfect way to relax after you've trained.
The trouble is, though, that there's a debate going on about how safe they are. Some say it's risky to be exposed to all that heat before or after strenuous exercise, which of course is exactly when people in sports centres want to use them. There have also been problems with people overusing them to sweat off weight. So, to avoid any possible dangers, I don't think I'd include them on my list.
Talking of dangers, I wonder whether we ought to have some sort of facility where minor injuries like cuts and bruises and sprains can be treated.
Maybe. It would seem to make sense with all the mishaps that are bound to occur when you have so many people running and jumping about and so on. Ah, hold on though. Isn't the new medical centre going to be built right opposite?
Yes, it is. It should be finished by the end of next year.
Then there's no point, is there? Anyone who gets hurt can go over there, where there'll be much better treatment than anything we could offer on site.
Yes, I can see that.
What we should provide, though, is a facility with full-time physiotherapists for everybody on the campus, that is. As well as treating people, they could work on prevention of things like muscle tears and strains.
Right.
And something else the new place ought to have, also as a way of preventing injuries, is somewhere to test just how fit people are before they start lifting weights or running long distances and so on.
Yes, I was going to suggest that. When I was at the Newport Centre, they put me on a static bike to check out my cardiovascular system. Then they worked out how much body fat I had. All of it valuable information telling you exactly what shape you're in.
Another thing I've heard some universities do, especially some of the newer ones, is provide rooms and equipment for lectures to take place actually inside their sports centres. How do you feel about that?
Well, as it happens, I've got first-hand experience of that too. We used to have some of our sports science lectures right next to the main sports hall, and I think it made what we were hearing about seem much more relevant to the real world. So in that respect, I definitely think it's a good idea, yes.
I can see that, though my own feeling is that we need to have more concrete reasons. The problem is that we won't have unlimited space, and somehow I don't think providing more lecture halls is going to be one of our priorities. So I'd be against that one, I'm afraid. Anything else?
Well, just that I agree about the need to have a place where people can go for a chat and maybe have a coffee or a bite to eat together. That was something I always thought was one of the strong points of the centre in London. It was a great place to find out about new activities from the people who actually did them.
Before you hear the rest of the talk, you have some time to look at questions 27 to 30. Now listen and answer questions 27 to 30.
So what about the main sports facilities themselves? What do we need?
Well, we don't need a rugby pitch because there's already one on the campus. The same's true of table tennis, really. Most of the halls of residence for students have their own tables, so there's no point in using precious space here for any more.
Agreed. Something none of them have, though, is any sort of pool. A lot of students have complained about this, saying they have to take a bus downtown if they want to go for a swim.
Yes, that's definitely one for this place. Perhaps a jacuzzi too. That would be nice, wouldn't it?
It would. Perhaps next to the squash courts, just down there to the right. They are very popular, by the way. I think we should have a couple more here, don't you?
Absolutely. And another sport that's been growing in popularity is volleyball, especially since we did so well at the last Olympics.
Don't you mean basketball?
Yes, I do, sorry. Anyway, the point is that there is a court in the old gym next to the Students' Union building, but it always seems to be fully booked up, even though it's not very good. And there's nowhere else on campus to play.
OK, let's have one of those too. How much space have we got left, by the way?
That is the end of part 3.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to Part 4.
Part 4.
You're going to hear a lecture on some useful information for your travelling around Britain. Listen to the first part of the lecture and complete the notes below.
First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 40. Now, listen carefully and answer questions 31 to 40.
Good afternoon and welcome to the session on Britain. This afternoon I would like to provide some useful information for you about travelling around Britain. Britain has over 700 tourist information centres. You will find them at major ports, airports, stations, historic landmarks and towns and holiday centres. So just look out for this sign that says Tourist Information. The staff will be able to answer your holiday queries as well as provide essential maps, guides and brochures. Tourist information centres at major ports and airports in London and addresses of British Tourist Authority European offices are all listed on the Tourist Information Centres. Now let's talk about the telephone in Britain. You know, Britain is well supplied with public telephones. Street kiosks take 10-pence coins. In city centres, mainline railway stations, airports, and central London underground stations, payphones and card phones are in operation. For the latter, small plastic phone cards are used, and these come in 10, 20, 40, 100, and 200 units, and can be bought at post offices, news kiosks, station bars, and shops where the green and white card phone sign is displayed. When using the different public telephone systems, make sure you read the dialling instructions carefully. Now, let's see the banks in Britain. There are 24-hour banks at London's two main airports. One is Heathrow and the other is Gatwick. Otherwise, banks are normally open from 9:30 to 15:30 hours, Monday to Friday. Barclays Bank and National Westminster Bank offer a Saturday morning service at some of their branches. National Jara Bank has 42 bureaux de change located in post offices throughout the country in main tourist areas. Opening hours are 9 o'clock to 17:30 weekdays, 9 o'clock to 12:30 Saturday mornings. One exception to this is the Trafalgar Square office, whose opening hours are 8 o'clock to 20 o'clock weekdays and Saturdays, and 10 o'clock to 17 o'clock on Sundays. The bureau de change services are available to overseas visitors. Visitors can change their money there. You can also change money at bureau de change, large hotels, department stores and travel agents. Be sure to check in advance the rate of exchange and the commission charged, as these vary considerably. Wherever possible, you are advised to use a bank or bureau de change, which conforms to the BTA Code of Conduct. In most cases, this is indicated by display of the code.
That is the end of Part 4.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.